Hello, this is Mac Haddo, Senior Fellow in Public Policy with the American Kratom Association, and welcome to Episode 3 of the End Kratom Misinformation series, where today we're going to focus on the truth about autopsies and toxicology screens that allegedly involve kratom. As a part of this, we simply have to look at how bad science and bad reporting combine to create so-called kratom deaths when the evidence simply does not support the often convenient conclusion by a coroner or medical examiner. For years, Americans have been told over and over again this frightening story: kratom killed my family member. Sensationalized stories about so-called kratom deaths are spawned largely by the claims of grieving parents who read the word kratom in an autopsy report, many of whom have been encouraged by trial attorneys to go public to infect jury pools for personal injury cases. They seek sensationalized headlines in media stories. They testify at highly charged legislative hearings. Reporters jump at the chance for television interviews. Documentaries have been produced, and social media campaigns across the country all repeat the same distorted message about the dangers of kratom. To be clear, families who have lost loved ones deserve compassion. Their grief is real, but public policy cannot be based on grief alone. It must be based on good science and reliable evidence. When it comes to deaths allegedly caused by kratom, the evidence often tells a far different story than those sensationalized headlines. Today, we're going to examine one of the most important questions on the entire kratom debate: how reliable are autopsies and toxicology reports when determining whether kratom actually caused a death? The answer may surprise you. The Wyatt Wheeler case is probably the best starting point for this discussion. There are other high profile cases, and we will address them in other episodes. But the Wyatt Wheeler case is one of the most widely publicized examples of an alleged kratom only death, and his Hollywood connected mother, Patty Wheeler, is today working hard to become one of the most visible anti kratom advocates in America. When I first met Patty Wheeler, she asked me to be in a documentary about her son's death, and she personally assured me that this was not an effort to ban kratom. It was only to educate and to encourage good regulations. That's an objective the American Kratom Association believes passionately in, and I readily agreed to participate in the Wyatt Wheeler documentary. This case is the shining example of why what we are led to believe to be a crystal clear case of kratom causing a death until it's not. Patty Wheeler's documentary has been screened or promoted in several states, and she's working hard to sell this film to a national streaming service that to date has not been successful. Now, this documentary is being used for the very purpose Patty Wheeler personally assured me it was not intended to be: to ban kratom. Wheeler has now forged an alliance with various anti-kratom voices, including Dean Francis, the founder of End Kratom Addiction, Wendy Chamberlain, founder of Kratom Danger Awareness, Utah State Senator Mike McKell, and Michigan House Speaker Matt Hall, all of whom are calling for outright bans on kratom. In every public appearance, Wyatt's death is presented as ironclad proof that kratom itself is deadly. The claim appears to rest largely on the conclusion reached by the coroner who led this autopsy. And all of that depends on one important and fundamental issue. Are any of these conclusions supported by the actual evidence and data? Or was this just a coroner who wanted to validate a belief of a grieving mother? An investigative report published by the Floridian, a publication based in Florida where Patty Wheeler currently lives, exposes the real truth about the death of Wyatt Wheeler. And it clearly does not appear to be from kratom overdose, as Patty Wheeler was apparently led to believe by that coroner. Check out the headline that exposes the truth about the story Patty Wheeler has been telling for the past couple of years about the death of her son Wyatt. It reads, quote, Patty Wheeler says kratom killed her son. The autopsy tells a more complicated story, unquote. The story that follows acknowledges that Patty Wheeler's emotional plea is powerful. Her son, Robert Wyatt Wheeler, who was attending Texas Christian University, used a legal herbal supplement, suffered a seizure-like activity, and died. In numerous interviews and recent legislative appearances, Patty Wheeler has attributed his death to kratom and urged lawmakers to ban the substance. But this is where the story gets very interesting. The Wyatt Wheeler talk screen shows there were 10 different substances that were specifically quantified, and you can see each of them here on this excerpt from the talk screen itself. Each one, and certainly when viewed in combination, raised legitimate questions about the role these substances could have played in the death during the review of the cause of death. But the investigative journalists point out the one substance that became the headline, kratom, was only detected as positive, but not in sufficient amounts to even be quantifiable in the talk screen. That directly contradicts the claim Patty Wheeler makes in virtually every interview that Wyatt had consumed massive amounts of kratom immediately prior to his death. If that were true, it would have been present at a quantifiable level in the tox report. Kratom was not. And the Floridian also pointed to a finding in the autopsy that is never mentioned by Patty Wheeler or any of her supporters. Wyatt had, quote, a reported history of prior accidental overdose on fentanyl and cocaine. When we take a closer look at the background of this case, more and more questions are popping up. It is unexplainable why a coroner would list kratom as a factor in a death when it is not even a quantifiable level when tested in a toxicology screen. And that is a huge red flag. Wyatt certainly was not taking massive amounts of kratom, as Patty Wheeler has repeatedly claimed, immediately prior to his death, because if that happened, it absolutely would have been specifically quantifiable on that tox screen. In a podcast called Kratom Sobriety, Patty Wheeler was a guest on August 21st of 2024. And listen to what she says about what the coroner told her on Wyatt's death.
The medical examiner said that the cause of death was kratom. It was high, heavy doses of metratropine. She said there was a trace of an antihistamine, but it was so low because it obviously was taken early in the morning and this was in the early evening. She felt that it didn't have anything to do with his passing and that it was, in her opinion, kratom, and that they had been seeing an increase of hospitalizations and deaths in Fort Worth. I just want to see legislation and restrictions put on kratom in a positive way. I'm not here, again, I said, I'm not here to advocate for some kind of prohibition.
Patty Wheeler specifically says the coroner told her Wyatt's death was definitely a kratom death, and the coroner reported that she had seen increases in hospitalizations and deaths due to kratom in the Fort Worth area in the several years preceding Wyatt's death. So, assuming the statement to Patty by the coroner occurred before the talk screen was completed, at a minimum, this shows that the coroner was influenced by two things. First, the report by the mother that her son had been using a significant amount of kratom for several weeks before his death. And second, the clear bias of the coroner, who affirmed the general report of kratom-implicated hospitalizations and deaths in the Fort Worth area in the couple of years preceding Wyatt's death. That's not science, particularly given the tox report. That's letting a personal bias show. Maybe the coroner was just trying to comfort a mother who wanted to blame kratom since Wyatt had allegedly started using it a few weeks before. But if that's true, then the coroner deprived Patty Wheeler of the one critical element in the grief that she was legitimately feeling for the death of her son, the truth. The Floridian then identified how that coroner's unsubstantiated claim on Wyatt's death being caused by kratom could have a far larger impact on the public policy discussion. Quote, the question is whether her son's death has been accurately described in public debates that could affect millions of consumers and an entire product category. That is especially important where policy proposals do not merely target concentrated extracts or high-potency 7-OH products, but natural kratom leaf as well, unquote. In the Kratom Sobriety podcast, Patty Wheeler made a statement that directly contradicts what she is saying today. Listen to this.
Welcome to the Sober Spill. I am incredibly grateful to have Patty Wheeler on with us today. Patty
on the sidelines. And I had said to her, I want to do something. I don't know what I want to do, but what I don't want to do is just sit back and let Wyatt become another perceived overdose, because I know it was something else. And I knew from the minute it happened that it was Kratom. Okay. So that's what we're asking for, is consistency, transparency, proper labeling, and informed consent. The purpose of the film, to be clear, it is not to take Kratom away from anyone. It's not to create this ban on Kratom. I don't want to take something from someone it's really helping them. What I want, and I feel like common sense, just common sense should prevail. Let's do labeling. Let's do transparency about what's in it, proper labeling, and then you get informed consent. And that's it.
The documentary is not about banning Kratom. It is only about regulations. That very same message was repeated in an article in Movie Maker where Joanne Robino, who is a longtime personal friend of Patty Wheeler, who works on Hollywood films, and who is the director of the Wyatt Wheeler documentary, she says the same thing. Quote, "We do not want to ban Kratom. We want the industry to take responsibility for the products as they are selling to the tune of billions of dollars. We have spoken to numerous experts who all agree it may have benefits, but there needs to be much more research and reclassification of the products if they are currently calling it a food." Patty Wheeler then repeated the same message on a Mountainside podcast on February 15th of 2026, and that date is important. Patty Wheeler confirms that she is not trying to ban Kratom. She only wants to regulate it. She openly acknowledges there are people who benefit from Kratom use, and she does not want to take Kratom away from them. Then, in a startling contradiction, just 4 days later, Patty Wheeler is hosted on the floor of the Utah State Senate by Senator Mike McKell, and she completely abandons the purpose of the documentary on her son's death that she had repeatedly stated it was. There, in what appears to be a huge change made at the encouragement of Senator McKell, Patty Wheeler is selling a completely different story.
Senator McKell.
Thank you. Personal privilege, Mr. President.
Granted.
Thank you. With me today is Patty Wheeler. I want you to welcome her today. She lost her son, and I know I've invited you. You've seen an invite to attend a movie, a documentary about Kratom, and she lost her son. He was a student at TCU. He was a business student. Austin Wheeler, Wyatt. Sorry, I apologize. But if you could welcome her and give her a warm welcome. She flew in from Florida to be with us today. So, Mr. President, if you could welcome her, that'd be great.
Welcome to Utah. Thank you for being here. It's an honor to have you here. Thank you for helping us get through this issue, and thank you for coming in to help us. Thank you again. Great to have you in Utah.
Now, Patty Wheeler says Kratom absolutely has to be banned in the state of Utah. And she says that in one media interview after another.
Movie night for Utah lawmakers on what some insist is a deadly and serious topic.
One of the filmmakers is in town calling Kratom, sold in stores, as addictive as heroin or even morphine. Ryan Malahy with this story.
Patty Wheeler says she lost a son to Kratom. She's also the executive producer of the film Kratom Side Effects May Include, and she was invited here to Utah in the middle of a Kratom debate here at the Capitol.
I had no idea what Kratom was, had never heard of it.
Then for Patty Wheeler, who arrived here from Florida today, a sudden, devastating reality.
My son Wyatt passed away from Kratom.
There's no doubt in your mind that Kratom was the cause of Wyatt's death.
100%, and the coroner.
One of Senator McKell's colleagues warned me personally about how McKell is such a media hound, he would climb to the top of Mount Everest to kiss an albino yak on the lips if he thought a news camera would be there. Senator McKell himself showed during the debate in the Utah legislature that the truth should not get in the way of the crusade to ban kratom. Apparently, it is justified to say whatever is necessary to get a vote to ban kratom. There's not much opportunity to attract sensationalized headlines about regulating kratom. A lot of legislators agree with the American Kratom Association that should be done. But Senator McKell appears to have convinced Patty Wheeler that it would be a far better path to get attention to the documentary if she joined him on his anti-kratom crusade. Senator McKell and Patty Wheeler then hosted a showing of the very documentary Wheeler had said was not about banning kratom, only regulating it. Then on March 18th, 2026, Patty Wheeler is standing next to Michigan House Speaker Matt Hall, begging for a ban on kratom.
Patty up here. I know this was a very emotional day for Patty. She's gone all over the country and advocated in other states about the dangers of kratom. And it just happened she was here today while we were moving this bill, and so I wanted her to have the opportunity to give her thoughts on the bill today and the problem overall of kratom. So welcome, Patty. Great to have you here. Yep.
Thank you, Speaker Hall. Wow, this is a very emotional day for me. I never imagined myself to be an advocate. In 2022, October, I lost my twin son, Wyatt, to kratom, and he was with his twin brother when it happened, and my journey took me to produce a documentary, a film about kratom. And it is not a film to evoke outrage. It was a film to request attention. We needed transparency, we needed awareness, and we needed proper labeling. Michigan today did an unbelievable thing. I have been honored to be with Utah, Virginia, Connecticut, now in Michigan, supporting such a law, a ban. This needed to happen.
Then on April 21st, 2026, Patty Wheeler joined End Kratom Addiction Now founder Dean Francis and his son Cameron, who are on their own tour claiming natural kratom leaf products led to such a high level of addiction with Cameron, he had to be admitted to an inpatient detox facility to get clean of what he described as only natural leaf kratom. What we do not know is how much of Dean Francis's story is wrapped in the same misinformation as Patty Wheeler has been promoting from the coroner's autopsy report. Dean Francis, on a daily basis on social media, acts like a carnival barker, claiming the end of the kratom industry and the demise of the American Kratom Association. But, like the carnival huckster selling tickets to see the man with two noses, it's all fake. I have personally invited Dean Francis on several occasions to join me in a public forum to discuss all of these issues, to discuss whether kratom is truly the dangerous substance he claims, and if it was just natural kratom leaf that led to Cameron's addictions problems. Dean Francis has flatly refused. He instead prefers to being a keyboard commando to lob his anti-kratom attacks from behind a computer screen. I've invited Cameron Francis, his son, to do the same. Cameron actually accepted the invitation at first, but he has now gone silent for the past 6 weeks. I then invited Executive Director of the End Kratom Addiction nonprofit created by Dean Francis, Hillary Teslick, to have this open forum with the moderator of her choice, and guess what? She also declined, albeit she did so by her description respectfully. I told each of them they can pick the moderator. Attendees can ask any question they like. All refused. So here is the bottom line question that I want to examine in a special episode that applies to the so-called kratom-only deaths. First, can coroners or medical examiners get it wrong on a death report, Or do we have to treat their conclusions in every case as the gospel truth? Second, should legislators base legislation on autopsy reports that claim to be kratom only, or should they look behind those conclusions for the truth? And third, who are the real victims when a coroner or medical examiner makes an incorrect finding on an autopsy report? I invite you to stay tuned and continue on our journey to end kratom misinformation. Thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to examining these issues in future episodes.